We're back for another video on shock basics. This is number 5 in the series. This will be base valves, okay? Base valve is a piston that's fixed in the tube that creates a pressure barrier. So there's a high pressure system and a low pressure system on each side of the base valve. The base valve is not to be misunderstood with a base shock or a baseline. Guys are like, give me a base valve shock package. I'm like, you want base valve shock package? You want baseline? They want a basic setup. Okay, that's not what a base valve is. Base valve is a physical object. It's a piston that's located in the shock. In a 25 series shock, the base valve goes right here where the connector ring is, and it's fixed in there. And that base valve will have shims on each side of it, held together with a nut assembly. If you can see that, the little nut and bolt assembly will be on the base valve. This base valve would have O-rings on it. It's fixed in the tube, trapped between the upper and lower tube. And then when the cap comes down, that holds everything in. So this is a fixed point in the shock. Okay, this is the connector ring that you see right there. It goes in right there. That's the connector ring. It's just a piece that connects the lower and upper body together, and the base valve replaces that. Well, that's fixed in there. In this shock, this is a 15 series shock, has a base valve in it. As you see, it does have gas pressure, but the shaft isn't coming out. Okay, now this particular shock we did stuff because somebody at one time had a rule where the shaft couldn't advance out at all. So we did some very low drag stuff. That rule, I think, has since gone away. Okay, but this is it's a shock. It's got valving in it, but it doesn't have shaft pressure. If this was a gas shock, the shaft would come right out. The gas pressure would push it out. Okay, this shock has a base valve that's fixed in the tube in about this spot right here. Okay, and then we have oil, the main shaft, we have gas up here, and we have a base valve right here. If you damage this body, you have to get a new base valve and everything. We did try to make them replaceable, but it's just not very feasible. So it's better just to start over. So on a slit, one piece body, the base valves are fixed. This makes for a very good B mod, A mod. There's nothing wrong with this piece just because it ain't got one of these on the end of it. But if you have to run this type of shock, like in a B mod or in some of the Crusa mods, this is a very good piece because the base valve functions very well, and it creates it makes the shock work. The function of a base valve has always been less rod force. Well, it's not, in my opinion, about less rod force. It's about controlling that oil above the main piston. So the dividers up there are trying to hold that oil back, and the main piston's trying to push force in it. And when we hit a bump, it may push the whole column. Well, the base valve, because it's fixed, gives that pressure, that oil column, something to push against. And as it processes through this piston, it goes from a high pressure system to a low pressure system. And on the low pressure side, it doesn't take much gas to control that. That's why this rod isn't pushing out, because this shock has very little gas in it. Okay, but to me, still, it's not the lack of rod force does make better feel in the car. But to me, what really works is this oil column never fails. Okay, it never pushes the whole column and does this. So at the end of the stroke or during a hole, we don't lose grip at the tire. Okay, so yes, places like Wheatland, Missouri, definitely need a base valve. Some people don't want to pay for it. and that's understandable. It does add cost to the shock, but in a dirty or a very slick racetrack, very tracks that are very hard to get a hold of, some of them down south, sandier, some of the red clay is very hard to get a hold of. You need to run a base valve. Okay, if you're running Wichita, Kansas, you can get away without it, but the base valve is going to make that car have better traction all the time. So the base valve is a very good piece. Okay, now here's the problem. If you're running shock brand X and you like their base valve or you like their shocks and you want to run a base valve in that brand, by all means run it. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just going to say not all base valve shocks are created equally. In a twin tube, in order to make this shock function, this is a base valve. Every twin tube has to have a base valve in it. Okay, this is part of what makes it good and part of what makes it bad. It's a very small environment. It's a very small piece in comparison. So the little shims on the end create some issues that you can't get around. And issues in a base valve shock. So if you older gentlemen, guys, remember back when we had twin tube shocks, it may have been different colors than that. They leaked a lot. A lot of the problems stemmed in the base valve. So they never really fixed them. They just kind of went to a gas shock. Okay, so not all base valves are created equally. There are problems with base valves. Some companies may do it better, and some of your bigger, better companies actually do it worse. So if you're shock guy, you need to get with him and quiz him on base valve technology and what makes it good for the car, what makes it good for the shock. And if he can't tell you these things, then maybe it's time to find a new shock guy. So shock basic, we're not going to get into all the ins and outs of the base valve. I just want you to understand it is a piston. It is a physical piston that's fixed in the tube, whether it's trapped in the tube between the cap and the body, is how some companies do it. Whether it's affixed in the middle of the tube and doesn't come out, that's how some companies do it. And we do it both ways. And I think we have an excellent base valve. It's worked very well for us. We've had a lot of success on it. So if you're interested in a base valve shock, get a hold of me and I'll tell you more. Don't forget, go to our website, bsbgofast.com, bsbshocks.com. A lot of reading on BSB Go Fast. A lot of stuff there for you to learn. If you want to become part of a team member, you can find that on our website and read about that and join Team BSB. It's a setup program based on technology. So if you want to be involved in that, we'd love to have you for this season. So grab hold and join it. Guys, shock basics. That's what we're doing. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to tell your friends. But shock basics, part 5, base valve. Don't forget, keep your eyes open for the next one because it's valving. I'm going to explain high-speed valving, low-speed valving. We will get maybe into a little more details on it because it's very important. So look for that video. Probably happen sometime next week. Guys, we love you. As always, go fast, and we'll see you next time.